It's fairly common knowledge that a Formula One career, like most sporting careers, doesn't last for a lifetime. This means that Formula One drivers have to look beyond their racing career to find another profession. Some join broadcasting companies such as Sky Sport, and others go on to lead spaghetti companies or perhaps even create adult toys. Some of these career changes are quite shocking and impressive, but few of them are as impressive as the one of Formula One legend Carlos Reutermann, a man who nearly had the chance to lead his country. Carlos Reutermann was born in Santa Fe, Argentina in 1942, and as a kid he probably watched his home hero Juan Manuel Fangio take the wheel of different cars during the 50s and establish himself as one of Formula One's all-time greats. Carlos's family, however, wasn't much of a racing family at all. Instead, they focused on farming. So, it was only until he was 23 that Reutermann started racing in cars. That by itself is totally insane. Most Formula One racing drivers today, such as Franco Colapinto, usually start their career when they're about 8 years old, or if they're late during their teenage years. Reutermann, on the other hand, was out there starting his professional racing career in a Fiat at the age of 23. His decision to race paid off, and after a few years of climbing the ranks through sports cars and Formula 2 cars, Reutermann made his Formula One debut with Brabham in 1972. Reutermann's debut started in an amazing fashion, when he dragged his Brabham to pole position in front of his home crowd at the Argentine Grand Prix. However, due to a pit stop where he got worn tires put on instead of fresh new ones, Reutermann dropped off to 7th place. 2 years later, he would do well at the season opener in Argentina once again, and with him leading the race with only one lap to go, it was looking like Reutermann was headed for his first Formula One victory, and he was going to achieve it in his home race. But with a few miles to go before the checkered flag, that is exactly what didn't happen. Reutermann's car broke down in front of his home crowd with only half a lap left to go. Luckily for him, he would take his first win in Formula One at the next round in South Africa, and he continued his upward form for most of the season. For the next few years, Reutermann's racing career went decently well. He drove for top teams such as Lotus and Ferrari, where he earned many wins and even more podiums, but his best shot at winning the title came in 1981, where after a highly successful season, the final round came in Las Vegas. Reutermann was leading the championship by only 1 point, and all he had to do was to finish ahead of his championship rival Nelson Piquet. But things just didn't work out for him. For some reason, even though he had qualified on pole, Reutermann did not have any pace, and he eventually lost the championship title to Nelson Piquet. The next year in 1982, Reutermann was very hesitant to race with Williams or even in Formula One at all, even though he was at his prime. This was mainly because of the war between Britain and Argentina over the Falkland Islands. Reutermann did not want to be racing for a British team during this difficult time for his country. The team at Williams, including people such as Patrick Head and Frank Williams, persuaded him to race. He had a legitimate shot at winning the championship in 1982. Williams had produced a rocket ship for that year, which actually ended up winning the championship with Keke Rosberg. So, he only raced for 2 races that season, where he finished 2nd place for one of them and retired from the other. After this, the war was starting to get intense, and therefore, with 12 wins to his name, the record for the most podium finishes, and one of the most successful racing careers at the time, Reutermann left Formula One entirely. He moved back to his hometown in Santa Fe, Argentina, and he felt like he had something to give back to his community. So, after the Justicialist political party invited him to join them, he ran for the position of governor in the Santa Fe province in 1991. Due to his popularity among the people, Reutermann won the position, and he would lead the region for the next 5 years. However, due to the Argentine constitution, Reutermann wasn't allowed to run for an immediate second term. Instead, he had to wait 4 years before running again. Little did he know that this law would actually play in his favor. At the end of 1999, Reutermann was elected as the governor of Santa Fe once again. However, the country was experiencing the first few stages of an economic recession, and the worst was still yet to come. The 2001 Argentine Great Depression reached an all-time low. The value of the Argentinian currency was dropping and their GDP was going down with it as well. There were very little jobs around, and many workers had to be laid off around the country. The conditions got so bad that the Minister of Economy at the time resigned, only to be replaced by another guy who only lasted less than 3 weeks in office before being replaced by a man named Cavallo. Many of Cavallo's decisions, together with those of the presidents, made many Argentinians angry, this including people in the government. So, with that, tensions started to rise internally, until they finally reached a boiling point. A series of successive riots around and in Buenos Aires left a lot of property loss, injuries, and deaths. This made the president to resign, flee from the capital, and as a result, the executive government fell. Meanwhile, while all this was happening, the Santa Fe region, which Reutermann was leading at the time, was actually not so bad. Reutermann took different steps than the mainstream government in the efforts to deal with the economic depression. His government decided to avoid taking loans like most leaders were doing, a decision that turned out to be just as good as subscribing to the channel. This resulted in Santa Fe not falling into too much debt and having an overall smoother experience when compared to most of the country. However, with the economy at its lowest and the absence of a president or a vice president, Argentina needed somebody who was able to get them out of the mess that they were in. Many of the people turned to Reutermann to get the presidential seat, but instead, to the shock and disappointment of many, he humbly declined, and that position was given to his fellow governor and justicialist party member Rodriguez Sá, a man who didn't last in office for too long. After Argentina's economy finally got back up on its own 2 feet, Reutermann continued to be active in the country's politics. Furthermore, he even considered running for presidency in 2011, but then, once again, he decided not to do so. Carlos Reutermann's story is like no other, from being a little boy raised on an Argentinian farm to racing competitively at the pinnacle of motorsport and then leading his province and nearly his country through an economic disaster. Reutermann currently holds the record of being the only driver in history to score 100% podium finish in the World Rallying Championship, and also 1 out of 2 drivers to score points in both Formula One and WRC. His legacy both in Argentinian history and in motorsport is truly magnificent.